Hey everybody, Charlie Stevens here. Thank you so much for joining me for another guitar lesson. In this one we're going to learn an old cowboy song called Red River Valley. So this is a great song. The real reason we're going to learn it now though is because it uses a few things that we've recently learned about on this channel. So it starts with pickup notes. We learned about that kind of a while ago, so hopefully you've seen the episode on pickup notes. We also have a few rests in this melody, so this will give us an opportunity to read rests in a real melody. So far we've only checked out exercises that have those. This one also is in the key of G, and we've recently learned about that key on this channel as well. So we're going to learn about the key of G, we're going to learn about how key signatures work, and we're also just going to learn this nice simple melody, which we might come back to and do some more advanced playing on. Maybe we'll learn chords and ways to interpret the melody at some point as well. But for now, we're just going to do a really basic version so we can kind of talk about some of those concepts. Okay, so it starts with a pickup note, actually two pickup notes. So we have a measure where there's only two notes in there, and it's in 4/4. So we know that those must be the last two notes, the last two beats of a measure rather, right? If there's only two, that must be 3 and 4. So we'll start the tune like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so we'd have to come in on the third beat there using our pickup notes. Okay, so that's an open D and then an open G. Those are our two pickup notes, and then in the first measure, the first real measure, we never include the pickup notes as its own measure. Those ones don't count. So once we get to the first full measure, we call that the first measure. Okay, so once we get there, we're on a B note. Okay, so this actually outlines a G chord. These are all the notes in a G major chord. When we play our G major like this, you might notice that these three in the middle are open. Okay, so that's just a cool thing to note about this melody. It starts really stating the key of G and the G chord by using the notes that are in a G chord for the melody. Okay, and then we sort of go back down a G major scale. We repeat this B note. Okay, that's like the first three notes of a G scale, right? Okay. Okay, so those are the first two phrases. Okay, so I'm going a little quickly with that. Hopefully that makes sense to you, that we're just going back down a G scale. If you're familiar with your G scale, hopefully you're able to see what I mean by that. Okay, so then we get to that G here on the second real measure here. And then we get to our next phrase. Okay, so it starts on A, back to G, E, and then back up to G. Okay, that outlines a C chord actually. Those two notes are right in the middle of a C chord. So that's kind of what's going on here. We have a G, C. So if I were playing that da 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 da, fits nicely over those chords. Okay, great. So let's do that whole thing together. The whole first couple of phrases there. Come and sit by my side if you love me, or the lyrics, that part. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now we get to the fourth measure and we have a rest. What type of a rest is this here? Well, it looks kind of like a hat, and that rhymes with half. So yeah, it's a half rest, which is half the measure. That's 2 beats. So then we come in on beat 3, and it actually looks exactly like what we did earlier. 3, 4, 1, the exact same figures. We have a rest there in the beginning of measure 4, and then measure 4 ends with the same pickup notes that we had in the beginning. Okay, then this phrase is a little bit different. G, B, D. That's a G chord as well. Lots of different ways to mix those three notes up, and that's another way. This is the more correct way because they're in order. If we're going through a G scale, it'd be like we skipped the second note, went to the third, then we skipped the fourth, and we went to the fifth. That's really what makes up a triad: root, third, fifth. So that's just a great example of how that can occur in a melody too. So we have this one, and this one. Okay, now we're moving on. C, B, A. This is actually part of a D7 chord. Okay, that lasts for a whole note once we get to the A. 2, 3, 4. And then we have another half rest in measure 8, so we wait. 1, 2. Then on 3, we come in with a different figure this time. Okay, so the pickups into measure 9 are D, C, B. Let's write down our notes on our second string that we've learned. Okay. Just remember. Okay, then we stay on B. Bird the red. We had that figure earlier. That was our second phrase. B, A, G. So now we're using those same three notes in a different place of our melody. Okay, so from the pickup into measure 9. But remember the red. Okay, moving on. River valley. Okay, that was almost through the scale. If you're going in order of the scale, we go G, A, B, C, D. So it doesn't start on G. The last phrase started on G, so then we go to A. Instead of that, though, they mix it up. A, B. Instead of C, we skip over that one and go to D. And then we get to the C. Sounded kind of cool to arrive there after we passed it, right? I like that one. River, valley, 3, 4, 1, 2. We have another half note rest in measure 13, so we lay out here. And then we come in on beat 3, with 2 E's here. And the cow. Okay, and then an open D. So here we can see that there's a sharp symbol written in before the F. And that means that instead of playing F, we play F sharp, of course. Okay? So we'll come back to that one in a minute. But that's how it would look if we were not using the key signature. In order for us to know that was an F sharp, we'd have to write a sharp symbol in front of the F. We'll come back and talk about a different way to do that in a moment here. Cowboy. So F sharp, G, and then A. Loved. Okay, and then we have the last phrase. You're so true. That's the same as the second phrase again. B-A-G. So we had that, I think, 3 times total in this melody. Reminds me of a lot of stuff. When the moon hits your eye, or 3 blind mice. A lot of different melodies will use that because it's a very simple thing. 3, 2, 1. It helps us get to 1. It's a nice little musical figure. So that's very common. Okay, so that's the melody. Now let's talk about key signatures. So now we'll do this song again. Everything's exactly the same, but now I'm going to write an F sharp in the beginning of the piece. So now in the beginning, in between my clef, which in this case is in the G clef, because that's what we use on guitar. There are other clefs, but not ones that we need to worry about when we're playing guitar. So next to our clef and before our time signature, there's a sharp. So this sharp is written on the top line of our treble clef, and that line always represents F. So since I wrote a sharp on that line, that means every single F we come to will be played as an F sharp instead of an F. Okay? So we only have one F to worry about in this song. It's way down at the bottom in measure 14. So now when we get there, we're not going to see a sharp in front of that F. but we're going to know it's still meant to be played sharp because it's added in the beginning of the piece. Okay? And then we call this a key signature because if there's an F sharp in there, that immediately tells me we're in the key of G. Could also maybe be E minor, since as we talked about in our lesson about E minor, those are sort of the same thing. They share the same notes, right? So key signatures do share with their major and minor versions. Their relative minors could also be indicated by that since they have the same notes. But that's why we call it a key signature, because those are the only keys that have that. If it were in the key of D, I would have two sharps in my key signature because the key of D has an F sharp, but it also has a C sharp. So G and E minor, okay, that's the only time where we only have one sharp in our key signature. So that's why they call it a signature. After a while, you get used to that. You look at that, you see one sharp, and you go, yeah, we're probably in G, maybe E minor, but probably G, okay? So that's kind of how that works. So once we establish keys, it's sort of a thing that they came up with hundreds of years ago to save ink, I think. So they didn't have to draw in the sharp symbol in front of every F when it was understood we're in the key of G. Every F is going to be sharp. So why don't we draw that in the beginning and not every time? So I think that might be the origins of it. But either way, that's the system that we have today, and that's what we need to understand. So now we're going to play Red River Valley again, and this time we're going to have the sharp in the key signature instead of in front of the F. Okay, let's go ahead and play that. Ready? I'm going to count to, I'll give us two measures of count. I'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and then we'll come in there, okay? That way we know how fast to go. We'll come in on the second measure of count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. All right, how'd you do with that? Did you remember to put in the F sharp even though it wasn't written there? It's okay if not. It takes a little time to get this in your head. I remember when I was first learning about this, I don't know, I just kind of thought it was sort of silly, I guess. It was just a little tricky to get my head around going, so I have to remember that one is sharp every time. But it does make a ton of sense. When you're used to playing in the key of G, I'm like expecting the F to be sharp anyway. So, you know, I don't really need to see the sharp written in front of the note head all the time. It sort of makes sense that it would be sharp. So when you're brand new to this, it does not make that much sense, but I promise you as you get more and more familiar with reading, it does, okay? So please take your time with this and feel free to play it both ways and look at the music in both examples and kind of compare, but realize that they're really exactly the same, just a different way of representing it. The way with the key signature is a little more correct. It would also take up less ink, so it would have been a bigger deal hundreds of years ago when this was all done by hand, right? Okay, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning the Red River Valley with me. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in another guitar lesson really soon. Thanks again.